Hey everyone, I'm Jill the Wandering Stamper. I hope you're having a fabulous Wednesday. It's a beautiful day today. My husband and my son are out hiking. He came over today, so I'm watching the pups and they're out in the wilderness somewhere. I'm not sure where. Hopefully they come back. Today we're going to be making a double pop-up card. I think you're going to love this card. It's super simple, but it's really cool and different. And we're going to use some really pretty designer series paper, and this is a great fold to use lots and lots of scraps for. So I always love a card that I can use my scraps because I hold on to all of my scraps, probably way too many. So let me take a moment to get the camera turned down and we'll get started on this fun card. Thanks for joining me. Okay, here is what we're going to be using paper-wise today. We're going to be using some pretty peacock and coastal cabana, and then we're going to be layering it with this beautiful, of course all my papers are stuck together, this paper is so pretty. It's Regal Winter and it comes in so many gorgeous shades. We are going to use the shade here with the pretty flowers. I've got some scraps, so we'll be using some scraps as well. And then we're going to be also using this distressed Regal Distress Pattern specialty paper. Again, this is a great project to use for your scraps, and I do have some scraps down here. So we'll definitely be utilizing those, and it goes so well with this paper. So we'll be using that as well, and some basic white. You're gonna laugh at me. I just finished doing this video a few minutes ago and realized I have bumped my background and everything was crooked, and I cut off half the cards. So we're doing this a second time, so this is a take two. My background that I normally have is at my daughter-in-law's house. I left it over there because we were working on some crafts together and I didn't bring it back, so I had to come up with a background for you guys. So I'm using my artboard because my table is very shiny and that would be really annoying to watch me craft on. So with that said, let's go ahead and start. So our base is pretty peacock, and we're going to do a basic card base. So it's going to be 5.5 by 8.5, and we're going to score it at 4 1/4. All right, just like so, and it's going to be oriented this way. So I'm going to go ahead and crease that and set that aside, and then I'm going to work from the front down. So we're going to cut some designer series paper strips. So I'm going to cut 2 strips that are 1 by 4 1/4, and I've used up all of my little scraps so on the last card, so we're going to be cutting a new sheet. So again, this is 1 by 4 1/4, and you're going to need 2 of those. So there's 1 and there's 2. All right, and then I'm going to be grabbing this other pattern, and probably I'm going to have to cut into my newer sheet, but we'll see. See, I hold all my scraps. It's craziness. All right, our second 2 pieces are going to be 3 inches by 1 inch. So there is 3 inches by 1, and I need 1 more. And I don't think any of my scraps are 3 inches long. Let's see. Ooh, this one is. I think we can get away with using this one. Like I said, whenever I can use a scrap, I will use a scrap. All right. So you need 2 that are 1 by 3 and 2 that are 1 by 4 1/4. All right, so we've got those. And then I'm cutting a piece of coastal cabana. Like you can see, again, I bet I have a scrap. I do. There we go. And that is going to be 1 7/8 by 3 1/8. So let's see how big our piece of paper is. 3 1/8 by 1 7/8. Okay, That's going to be for the middle. We're also going to be cutting a tag. I had pre-cut for my last video, but since I messed up, we'll be cutting a new tag. All right, so that is everything for the outside. And then for the inside, this is not counting the mechanism, we're going to need a piece of designer series paper. That's going to be 5 1/4 by 4 inches. So 5 1/4 by 4 inches. Now if you have directional paper, make sure you're cutting it so it works for landscape. And then I'm going to need a piece of basic white, which is going to be a little smaller. It's going to be 4 3/4 by 3 1/2. So 3 1/2 and 4 3/4. Okay, that's going to layer on that. All right. And then while we have our cutter out, let's go ahead and work on our mechanism piece. Let's see. This should be 8 inches long. So for the mechanism in the middle, I like to use the same color I'm using as my card base. So we're using Pretty Peacock, and that's going to be 3/4 inches wide by 8 inches long. Whoops. 3/4 by 8 inches. So I'm going to pull out the arm here and cut 8 inches. All right, and then we're going to do some scoring on this piece. It's going to be scored at 2 inches. Get this out of the way. 2 inches, 2 1/2 inches, 5 1/2 inches, 6 inches, 7 inches, and 7 1/2 inches. And don't forget, I'll have a link below to my blog, which will have all of these cutting and scoring dimensions on there for you. And then you're going to need another piece of Pretty Peacock. I'm looking for a scrap here. It's going to be 3/4 inches by 3 inches. So let's see, that is, I'm using scraps, so bear with me. 3/4 inch by 3 inches, and we're not doing any scoring on this piece. All right, so there we go. Get this out of the way. All right, we're going to do a little assembly, and then we will do some die cutting because I have to do that now. All right, so the way these front pieces go on is they're just going to be layered around the outside of the card, just like so. I like to kind of figure out where I'm going to place them all. So these are all going to go just like that, and there's just a little border around everything, so it works out nicely. And then this piece is going to go in the middle, just like that. All right? So let's go ahead and move these out of the way and start gluing these down. And there is no right or wrong way to do this. It's just however you decide. And I'm just making sure everything's nice and straight. And then I just like to make sure my tops are lined up. Okay, and we'll put this last piece on. This is a great project to do. You wouldn't even have to do a mechanism. This is a great card front just to crank out cards. because you get to use all those pretty scraps that you have laying in your card stash or your paper stash, just dying to be used. All right, so that looks good. And now this piece is going to be in the middle. Now, we're going to be adding a tag to the top, but normally you would just make this, for instance, this one would be basic white, and I would do my stamping on it and then add it to the middle. But I'm going to add a second layer above it, so that is where this kind of differs from a standard card. So we're just gussying this one up a little bit. So I'm just adding this piece right here in the middle. So there is our card front, almost. We just have to do our tag. So let's go ahead and work on the inside, and then we can get to all the nitty gritty. So I'm just going to add this piece of designer series paper inside this card with just a nice little margin around it. This is why I love the liquid glue. I can move my paper around and get it exactly where I want it. All right, and then this is ultimately going to go right here. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of stamping so we can move on to our mechanism. I am looking for a scrap, which I may not have, so we're just going to use, oh, this might be a good scrap. Okay, so for this piece, I'm going to grab my Coastal Cabana ink. We're just going to do the inside real quick. And I'm going to stamp off, and I'm just going to add a couple of these little snowflakes, and I'm stamping off because I don't want it to be super bright because I'm going to be writing on this card, so I'm just going to put a couple right there in the corner. All right, I'm going to clean that off, and then this is going to go on the inside. We're going to get that out of the way. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. This is the die that we're going to be using for this next part. On my previous video, I went ahead and die cut the piece and then stamped it. I actually like to stamp first, so we're going to do it that way. And then I'm going to run it through the die cutter. So I grabbed the Merry Christmas from, oh, by the way, the snowflake came from Iconic Imagery, and it also has a die. And then I pulled the Merry Christmas from Greetings of the Season, and then we're also using the Wishing You and Yours a Season of Happiness, Wonder and Happiness, and this comes from Peaceful Season. So I love those stamp sets. They're so pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up Merry and stamp that. And I think we need a little cleaner. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to grab the word Christmas. Again, this is with Pretty Peacock. And I'm just going to center that right below. Just like that. All right. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to close this up before I make a mess. I'm going to go back with this little snowflake. And I'm going to do the same thing with it. I'm going to stamp it in Coastal Cabana, stamp off, and I'm just going to put some of those around just like that. And I like to do it, I prefer to do my stamping before my die cutting because there's nothing worse than doing a cruddy job on your stamping after you've gone to the trouble to die cut. So I actually prefer to do it that way. All right, so now I can just lay that on there, and I'm going to grab this little mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine and I know you probably can't see a lot of this, and I apologize. That's why I usually do this ahead of time. You're probably hearing pitter-patter of big feet because my son's 90-pound dog is walking around the RV. I really need to take them to have a walk, but I wanted to try to get this video done since I messed up the first one. So, all right, this piece of paper is just a little too wide, but we're gonna make it work. Let's run this through here real quick. Now, on my previous card, I also die cut some snowflakes, but we're gonna do this one without, but I will show you the snowflakes. And I dropped something. We are gonna not do the snowflakes, but I'll show you what they look like. It's totally optional. So there is our tag. Get this out of the way. All right, so our tag is done, and that is going to go on the front of our card. So we've got that out of the way, and we've got our inside stamping. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on here. I wanted to get the front and the inside done, so then we can just focus on the mechanism. And then this just gets layered right on the front. And I love how this designer series paper just gives it that really pretty pop of color. All right, so that's it. So now on the front, we're just going to grab some of this pretty peacock and gold ribbon. It matches perfectly, it's so pretty. So I'm going to cut a chunk off, put my ends together, and feed this through. If you have a hard time pulling it through, just grab your take your pick tool and poke it through, and it pokes through really easily. All right, so that looks good. I actually did it backwards, but you know what? It's fine. We're gonna leave it that way. I like my knot to be, you know what? Let's just do it right. I always forget which way to put it through. We can't have an ugly bow, not when the rest of the card's pretty. All right, poke it through the front to the back, and then your knot comes out correct, just like that. All right, and now I'm gonna grab my two ends and just give them a little haircut so they're pretty. All right, that's pretty. Now I'm going to grab my dimensionals. Hopefully I've still got enough on my sheet since we're doing a take two. There we go. I think we're going to have just enough. I just want this to be nice and even, because I know it's going to go through a millimeter. Now make sure you're using sticky scissors, which are scissors you use with adhesive when you cut the little end pieces, because you don't want to mess up your good scissors. And these are my sticky scissors. So, all right, I'm going to pull these off. Before I got this take your pick tool, I used to have these little babies all over the RV. They'd be stuck to the dog, they'd be stuck to us. They seem to get around. All right, this is going to just go right here on the front. Now remember, the other option is to just simply stamp on it. Now I've pulled these gems from the 2024-26 in color shimmer dies, or shimmer gems. They actually really closely match this Coastal Cabana, so we're going to go ahead and use them. And I'm going to put one right there. I'm just going to put 3 of these on here. We'll do one right here, and we'll do one right here. Just adds a little bit of shimmer because, you know, it's Christmas. All right, so there's the inside of the card. So now it's time to create our mechanism. So we have this 1x3 piece, or 1 3/4 piece, and then we have this other piece that was 1 3/4 by 8. And remember, we scored it at 2 inches, 2.5 inches. So those are 2 mountain folds, okay? And then we have the 5.5, the 6, the 7, and the 7.5. All right, and those are all valley folds. So when you fold them up, they're going to look like this. All right? So I'm going to go ahead and add a little liquid glue to this back tab. And I'm going to fold it down and just press it in place, just like that. And so then when you open it back up, you have your perfect little square. All right, nothing gets glued here. So what ultimately will happen is this little strip is going to be attached to your card base, and this slides freely behind it. Okay, so we're going to be putting it over here. So the way I like to do this is I like to put my card on some type of measurement tool. Here's 1.5 inches. So you want this to go about 1.5 inches down and centered. All right. So I'm going to just rough it up just a little with my bone folder. It just makes everything move a little easier. And then I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue to each end. Remember, this is only 3/4 of an inch. Your mechanism that's going to slide is only 3/4 of an inch. So you don't have to worry about getting your glue too far. It's going to be right here. So I just put a little on each end, and then I'm eyeballing. Here's the 1.5 inch mark. So I want it to be about right here. All right, and then I'll just flip it over and just adjust it accordingly. Okay, and so then that is perfect. And then this is just going to slide behind it. All right, and that's going to move up and down freely. So all we have to do now is glue this portion to the top edge of our white cardstock. This is why you want to do all your stamping on your inside before you attach this, because you don't want to mess that up and have to take this off. That would be no fun. So all I'm going to do is kind of eyeball. I'm putting it at the edge of the white, and then I'm making sure it's about in the middle. And then I'm just going to push this down and hold it for a second. Okay. You can even rub it with the bone folder a little. All right. So now when you open it, here is our mechanism. Okay. We've got our two places where our pop-ups are going to go. All right. So now it's time to make our pop-ups. Pop-ups are super simple. They're just going to be, I'm grabbing that pecan, or that pretty peacock that we had before, and I'm going to cut two pieces that are 3.5 by 1 7/8. So let's see, we'll do 3.5 by 1 7/8. Okay, and then you're going to take whatever color you're using, basic white, very vanilla. In this case, I'm using basic white. And we're going to do two that are slightly smaller. So those are going to be 3.25 by 1 5/8. So 3.25 and 1 5/8. 1 5/8. So you need two of each of those. Okay. All right, so now we are officially done with all of our paper cutting. I wanted to do the mechanisms separately so that you would understand exactly how those all come into play. So now the last thing we're going to do is some of our final stamping. These are going to be tags for the inside. So let me just mount these here. So we've got our first stamp that says, "Wishing you and yours." So I'm going to grab my stamp pads again. I'm going to grab that pretty peacock. Hopefully stamping this straight. Okay, wishing you and yours. And then the other piece is going to be the rest of our sentiment, which says, "A season of wonder and happiness." Oh my goodness, that is not straight. All right, we're going to stand up this time. Much better. All right. And then I'm going to grab, you guessed it, that snowflake. And we're going to add those little snowflakes again. I like to keep pulling in what I did on the front. And again, I'm stamping off so they're not too bright, because I don't want them to overpower our wording. So that looks good. I need to ink up the stamp. It's getting a little dull. Or ink up the stamp pad. It's not very juicy anymore. All right, I think that looks good. So that's done. So super simple. I love how the Pretty Peacock and Coastal Cabana looks together. I would not have put those two together. So now we're going to grab that liquid glue again and just glue these on. Actually, that wasn't too bad, was it? It looked really crooked when I looked earlier, but it wasn't too bad. All right. So we're just going to layer these on. And we're just about done. Both dogs are staring at me right now, so I know they have to use the restroom. That should be fun, taking two dogs out at once. That's probably one of the few things I miss about living in a house, is just being able to let the dogs out to the backyard. All right, now I'm going to add some liquid glue to this bottom section here of our mechanism. And our bottom saying, greeting, I'm just going to make sure this is flat, and I'm going to center it right along the bottom, and I'm just checking my edges here to make sure they line up. And then I'm going to add some liquid glue here to the top of this 3-inch section and do the same thing with the top. Now I like to make my top pop up a little bit higher because I don't want to see this part when it pops up. So I typically will leave a little gap between the two, and that's usually sufficient. So I'm just eyeballing it, making sure it's all straight, making sure my edges are lined up, and just give it a good press. All right, and that's it, we're done. So now when you close the card, it actually closes quite flat, but then you pop it open and voila, there's your greetings. Look how cute. This is how it looks from the side. So you have one greeting that pops out a little more than the other, and see this little back part just freely goes up and down so that it can close your card with no problem. Now you could do your message here and do die cuts. You could do different die cuts. You just want to make sure when the cards close they don't go higher than the top of the card. But you could do some die cuts, you could do different shapes, you could do a circle. Anything that will close and still not go past the top of the card will work. But there we go. There's our card. Isn't it cute? I love it. I love how easy it is to make, but I love the uniqueness of these two little pop-ups, and you have a ton of room to write here. So there's our first card. This is the card I did earlier, and I added these little die cut snowflakes. So if you like that, I just stamped and cut three of the snowflakes and popped those on in different, some in front and some in back. So total option, but that was the card I did earlier. And let me show you this card. This one came from Yuletide Village, and I used the gorgeous paper from Seasons of Elegance, this paper here, and I paired it with gold metallic paper. I stamped and fussy cut the houses, and then just used my alcohol blends to color them in. And then I layered this one on dimensionals, and then this one I glued it flat so it has a little bit of height. And then I added this tree in Mossy Meadow because our card base is Mossy Meadow. Thought that looked nice, and then I just added a little tag to the front. And then when you pop it open, same exact sayings. I added some snow and some trees from the stamp set, and then added one more. I added the church to the inside. So super pretty. And I think the ribbon just really set off all of the colors as well. All right, so there's the second card. And then this third card, this is from a new stamp set called My Small Business. So if you're a business owner, if you're a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, a business owner, anything like that, this is a great little stamp set. It has lots of ways to say thanks. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 thanks or thank yous. And then you have all these little sayings. Your support deserves a big thank you. You got a shopping bag, a shop local, some hearts made with love, handmade for you. Thanks for being an amazing customer. Thanks for supporting my small business. It's such a cute little stamp set. So I decided, since I'm always sending thank you cards to my customers, I would make one with this. This is the first time I've used this stamp set. I used the Full of Life Designer Series paper, and then I used the base of Blueberry Bushel and Granny Apple Green cardstock. And then I stamped in different complementary colors, so that's Granny Apple Green, Blueberry Bushel, and Daffodil Delight. I added a few gems to the front, and I fussy cut this little shopping bag. And then in the inside, it says, thanks for supporting my small business and for being an amazing customer. And I just stamped the extra hearts in there and added another bag. Super easy, really cute, and it'll be such a nice little thank you card for my customer. And I have a customer that I will be sending this to right away. So there you go. There are 3 double pop-up cards for you. I hope you enjoy this card as much as I do. It's such a fun card to make. And again, you can use this front technique for a plain card and just do the front. You can do anything. I just gave you kind of 2 techniques, a front technique today, and then of course the fun inside. So don't forget to click on the link below so that you get all of the cutting and scoring instructions, and then all of the materials that I used on these cards will be listed in my blog as well. And don't forget, if you don't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you get notification of every video that comes out. I thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to go walk these dogs right now and then do a little more crafting. So I will see you later, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Bye.